So I like what Buttigieg had to say there because he's touching on something that is, in my opinion, a big problem with the GOP's messaging as it pertains to some of the culture war issues and the side that they like to take on those culture war issues. They like to simplify incredibly nuanced and complicated matters. So when JD Vance makes that statement about women who don't have children, he doesn't understand that he's actually insulting various groups of people. His assumption is that, oh, well, couples who don't have kids or women who don't have kids, they're childless by choice, right? They're selfish, they've decided against it, they're miserable women.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Leftist Losers Show, where we point out all of the losers of the left. And today I got a clip from the Young Turks for you guys, where Ana Kasparian and Cenk Uygur are just in absolute meltdown mode. They are super desperate for anything they can find to emotionally manipulate the left into being motivated to go vote against Donald Trump, because nobody's excited about Kamala Harris at all. You look at her polling data and her polling numbers, and she is getting crushed by Trump in the polls, especially in swing states, and she's never been popular. I mean, you look at the Democratic primaries back in 2020, and she was one of the first people to drop out because nobody's excited about Kamala Harris. Tulsi Gabbard absolutely demolished her in the Democratic debates during their primary season back in 2020. And so at this point in time, they are just desperate for any way they can attack Donald Trump and now JD Vance. And they've found something. They have found a way to emotionally manipulate the left into thinking JD Vance hates women and wants to actively put women into cages to basically be cattle for birthing, which is an absolutely ridiculous statement. The reality is JD Vance wants the focus of our country to be back on families and having children, because that's what's going to benefit us in the long term. And that's something that the left is not able to do. The left is completely incapable of making decisions that better us in the long term. All they care about is what makes them feel good in the moment and what they can use to emotionally manipulate other people to join their team. And so that is what they're doing. They're playing the sexist card. So we're going to go ahead and watch this clip of them just absolutely desperate to find any way they can to tear JD Vance apart.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
That Tucker Carlson interview with GOP vice presidential pick JD Vance dating back to 2021 has now come back to bite JD Vance right in the ass. Because that kind of messaging doesn't really play so well when you're trying to attract independent voters at a time when not Joe Biden, but Kamala Harris is the Democratic nominee to basically run against Donald Trump in the general election. Now, after that video resurfaced, and again, it dates back to July of 2021, a bunch of articles were written about it. Obviously, a lot of women were unhappy about him referring to childless women as, miserable cat ladies. Harris, by the way, became a stepmother to 2 teenagers when she married entertainment lawyer Douglas Emhoff in 2014.
And so here we go, right? This is what the left always does. He wasn't referring to women who can't have. So what they're going to do is they're going to say that the women who can't have kids but want kids, he's insulting them and attacking them, when that's not the reality. The reality is, when you're on shows like Tucker Carlson and these mainstream media, you only have a few minutes to say things, right? So a lot of them resort to saying hyperbolic things to shock people and to try to get a message across really quickly. And the message that JD Vance really wanted to talk about, and he's said this in other interviews, is he wanted to talk about the fact that a lot of people on the left don't even want kids, because they talk about how the future is pointless and that the world is going to end because of climate change and that there's no point in having kids and yada yada yada, right? And he's saying that why would we trust people who have that kind of mindset to lead us to a better future if they don't even think that it's worth having children, which is the only way that our species continues to exist, right? It's the most basic form of society, is having kids and families. If they're not even concerned about having a family of their own, why would we trust them with decisions to better our families? That was his point. And of course they can't argue against that, because they don't have an argument against it. So what they're going to do is they're going to do the same thing they do with abortion, right? If you ever try to push against abortions that are elective for vanity, the abortions because you just don't want to have kids because of financial reasons and selfish reasons, they automatically go, oh, well, what about rape and incest? When rape and incest is such a small part of abortion, they use that as a shield, right? You're not allowed to criticize women for abortions at all, no matter why they want it, because these extremes exist. It's basically the same type of argument. Not exactly the same, but it's the same idea. Now they're saying, well, you're not allowed to criticize the people who don't want kids because there are women who do want kids but don't have kids. They exist, and because you made them feel bad, your argument's invalid and you're an evil, terrible person. The left doesn't like to have real, nuanced conversations at all. What they want is a way to attack the emotions of their voter base to get them motivated to go vote, and that's what they're doing. This is a fantastic opportunity, sadly, for them to motivate their voters emotionally, and so they're going to take it. And that's what they're doing, and you're seeing it across the board, and it's stupid because it doesn't actually solve any problems, and it's not even a real conversation.
And the attacks against Pete Buttigieg, pretty gross as well. He announced that he and his husband adopted infant twins in September of 2021. So a few months after JD Vance made those statements. And by the way, Buttigieg weighed in on that interview just last night while speaking on CNN. So let's take a look at that.
The really sad thing is he said that after Chasten and I had been through a fairly heartbreaking setback in our adoption journey. He couldn't have known that, but maybe that's why you shouldn't be talking about other people's children. And it's not about his kids or my kids or the vice president's family. It's about your family, people's families whose well-being will depend on whether we go into a future led by somebody like Kamala Harris, or do you want your children to grow up in a country defined by a return to the chaos and recrimination and cruelty that was the hallmark of the Trump era?
And there it is.
So I like what Buttigieg.
Sorry, I thought I paused it. And there it is right there, folks. You notice how they cut that clip in a way that, one, he didn't even finish his point, and two, he ended with saying Kamala Harris and then went to, there's a bunch of chaos if you vote for Trump, right? Because that's the reality of this. They're once again going back to how can we frame Trump and now anyone who's attached to Trump's words in a way that emotionally manipulates people. And I hate saying it because I think we all on the right wish that we just focused on the facts. But the reality is a lot of people don't pay attention. And a lot of people are emotionally manipulated. They're able to be manipulated, especially the people who vote Democrat. I mean, and that's the reason why most people who vote Democrat are women. And I don't mean that to be sexist, but the reality is that women usually make decisions based on how they feel. And it's not about what you say, it's about how you made them feel, right? If you've ever heard that statement, there's some truth to that. They know that if they can make women feel like this guy's mean and terrible, just like they did with Donald Trump, it's fantastic for them. They're trying to ease back the attacks on Trump when they can. And so now if they can destroy JD Vance, they can now attach that to Trump. Because since Trump was almost just assassinated, it's a little touchy right now to like go full blown against him, even though some of them still are. But JD Vance is his free game. And so now that they can find statements like this that are going to make women feel like, oh, this man's so mean. How could he say that? I have a friend who couldn't have a kid. There's a lot of women that are in that situation. I mean, you look at our fertility numbers and like fertility and childlessness is through the roof. Or I should say fertility is not through the roof, but childlessness is. And so it's a really easy attack vector. And it is suck that JD Vance kind of gave him that ammunition, but the reality is what he's talking about, I think, has some validity to it, right? There are a lot of people, especially on the left, who don't think long term and prioritize selfishness and vanity as the center, materialism as their entire life and all they care about. And so they make a lot of decisions based on that. And his point was those aren't good leaders. That's not going to lead us to a prosperous future. It's just going to lead us down a road of corruption like we're seeing, where leaders just care about benefiting themselves like Joe Biden and his family and not benefiting the country. And so that, to me, that was what he was trying to say. If you actually watch the full interview, that's the message that came across. But sadly enough, it was a fantastic opportunity for them to drag him, and that's what they're doing because they don't have any other ammunition. They can't go back to the records. I mean, you look at the statistics for Donald Trump and the Biden administration. The Biden administration was terrible, and Kamala Harris was part of that. She was the vice president. That's why they're desperately lying about her not being the border czar, because the border is an absolute nightmare, and she was the primary person in charge of that. They even had all said that. They're like, oh, Kamala Harris is the border czar now, and that looks horrible. So once again, the only way that they're going to take down Trump and JD Vance at this point is to emotionally attack and try to whip up their voter base with emotions. And so that's what they're doing. That's what we're seeing. That's what we're going to continue to see.
Had to say there because he's touching on something that is, in my opinion, a big problem with the GOP's messaging as it pertains to some of the culture war issues and the side that they like to take on those culture war issues. They like to simplify incredibly nuanced and complicated matters. So when JD Vance makes that statement about women who don't have children, he doesn't understand that he's actually insulting various groups of people. His assumption is that, oh, well, couples who don't have kids or women who don't have kids, they're childless by choice, right? They're selfish, they've decided against it, they're miserable women. He's obviously tapping into a ridiculous stereotype, but you also have to consider the fact that there are plenty of women out there who want to have families. They haven't found the right partner for them yet. They want to ensure that they have a dependable partner to have children with. There are women who desperately want to conceive but cannot conceive for whatever reason. And by the way, you have Republicans now attacking in vitro fertilization to make it more likely for women who are having difficulty conceiving to be able to have children. There are also women out there who are step parents, right? And that kind of messaging doesn't really appeal to those women as well. And so it's interesting, Cenk, because
yeah, again, it's all about messaging and emotional attacks. Except he never said anything about people who adopted. He didn't say that if you have, he didn't say that you had to birth the children. He said that people who don't have kids and don't want kids are an issue when they're in leadership positions, not because they're an issue for that, but because how do we trust their vision of the future if they don't even want their family to exist or have a future? That was his point. They can't talk about that though, because again, there's no attack there for them to take. They're hoping that they can find anything possible to make their voters or people that might vote for them feel like they're being attacked by the right. And so the fact that he said cat lady, that it's ammunition for them. That's the sad reality. The other issue is they don't want to talk about the fact that feminism is a big reason why women can't have kids. They've convinced entire generations of women that they can go be CEOs of companies and then come out of it when they're 40 and then be able to start a family at that point when they're rich. And the reality is that's not the truth. Women's most fertile years are their early 20s. Maybe even before that. So if you want a family in the long term, like you should be spending your time focused on finding a good partner and focused on building a family, not focused on being a girl boss. But the left doesn't want to talk about that because that goes directly against their core tenets of feminism. It's not that women shouldn't have the right to do that. Of course they do, but they want their cake and they want to eat it too. And they've lied to women for so long that they can go ignore building a family their entire life and then just all of a sudden make it happen. That's not a reality, and that it isn't the reality, and that's why there's the stereotype of the miserable cat lady, because the miserable cat lady was probably a feminist who was lied to and told that she could do whatever she wanted until she's 40 and then have a family, and when that didn't work out for her, of course she's miserable. She just got her entire plan for her life probably ripped away, and so she adopts a bunch of cats, right? It's a stereotype. It's not across the board. Yes, stereotypes aren't good most of the time, but there's always a little bit of truth to stereotypes. The left doesn't want to have real conversations. They just want to emotionally motivate people to manipulate people essentially to get power. And that's what they're trying to do here. They don't want to actually have a conversation about what he said. They just want to whip up their voters.
Because Kamala Harris is a complicated candidate, okay? I don't know who she really is. She tends to kind of go with the flow and what's popular or trendy at any given moment. But what I will say about her is that she has been attempting to appeal to corporate America a lot more, and we're gonna talk about that later on in the show. I read about those things and it makes me dislike Kamala Harris as a candidate. And then that's immediately followed up by Republican attacks like this against women in general. And I'm like, I don't like that either. I don't like that at all, right?
Yeah. Well, look, the Republicans constantly disqualify themselves from huge sections of America. And remember, both the Republicans and the Democrats.
Yeah, well, that's because Republicans actually have morals and ideas that they want to enact and they want to talk about, whereas the left is just looking to manipulate people, which is why, like she just admitted, Kamala Harris just goes with the flow. Kamala Harris, remember, got into politics by, the sucky 5,000, doing whatever she had to do, wink, wink, to get power. And so why are we surprised that she continues to do so? She has no ideas of her own. She has no actual morals or principles to go off of because she's just in it for the money and the fame and the power. And that's blatantly obvious. Even the Democrats know that. That's why nobody wanted to vote for her. Kamala Harris is not popular at all, not even in the slightest. And the sad reality is JD Vance, by saying what he said, it gave them ammunition to attack him with. We can't deny that. I mean, look how hard they're pushing this, because again, the only way that they're going to beat Donald Trump is the same way they beat him in 2020, and that's to get people to vote against him and his candidate. So they're going to emotionally attack their own political party and get them motivated and say, look how evil these people are. You can't vote for them. And will it work this time? Who knows? I kind of wonder, Kamala Harris might be so unpopular that it won't work. So we'll see what happens, folks. I'm going to end it there. They just kind of rant about how Kamala Harris isn't that great, but how JD Vance is an evil, sexist, misogynist person. There's not much more to say about it. I just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention because this is all you're going to see probably for the next few weeks is this statement and them saying how horrible it is that he said this about women. But again, the reality is the left doesn't want to have a real conversation about maybe we shouldn't have leaders who don't want families when families are the core tenet of any society. And that's why communists always attack the family, the nuclear family. That's why BLM, who was openly Marxist and said they were Marxists, said that they must destroy the nuclear family because the nuclear family, when the nuclear family is strong and families are strong and people are having kids like crazy, communists and evil dictatorships don't succeed and don't do well. And so that's why they are always looking to attack people who want to make that the priority. Anyways, folks, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I rambled a lot, probably repeated myself way too many times, but it is what it is. If you guys enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe or comment down below what you think of this whole situation or their opinions. Or if you hate my opinion and think I'm super wrong, comment that as well and tear me apart. Do whatever you'd like. I will talk to you guys in the next video later tonight, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.